South Carolina versus Texas A&M. I am telling you, man, this is going to be a great matchup and a great football game. South Carolina coming out of a bye week. A&M coming out of a very, very good win against LSU this past week. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is the game of the week in the SEC that's going to be an outright dogfight. I don't care how you slice it or how you dice it. A&M's got to go on the road to South Carolina in a very hostile environment. Now, South Carolina, for what it's worth, has played some very tough opponents this year. They played in the beginning of the season LSU. They played Ole Miss. They played Alabama. And in two of those three games, they stayed around with them. They competed against them. Guys, they're a touchdown away or get an onside kick. They're a touchdown away from beating Alabama. They're field goal away from beating or tying LSU. Now, Ole Miss was the only one, which you have a very strong comparison to Ole Miss, especially what you do defensively if you're A&M. Ole Miss was kind of able to separate on them a little bit, but that was it's not like that South Carolina defense didn't show up. This team has two defenses, A&M, South Carolina, that are really good. Listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. For any A&M fan or for any fan in general around the SEC or college football in general that has not watched South Carolina play this year, guys, their defense is really stinking good. I have compared this. I have said this ad nauseum to some extent that everybody has kind of pushed back on me on this, and I fully believe this. I think that South Carolina's defensive line and front seven, if it's not one of the best in the SEC or the best in the SEC, it's one of the best in the SEC. Guys, they are 13th in the country in total defense. Their secondary is really good. They have arguably one of the best safety duos in the country, not just in the SEC. Guys, they're really, really good at stopping the run. They're really good against the pass. Guys, they have been able to take it to teams defensively. So now A&M, who's coming off a very emotional win against LSU, goes on the road to a very hostile environment against South Carolina. And I think now that Marcel Reed has done what he did against LSU, is he ultimately going to be the starter going in this game? I think that he should be. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But I think the number one thing because people will look at this game and say, oh, man, A&M's going to run away from A&M. A&M's going to run away from South Carolina. And listen, that 100% can be the case. It 100% could be the case that A&M can run away from South Carolina because offensively, South Carolina is a dumpster fire at times, especially at the tackle position against a really good defensive line in Texas A&M. But I feel like that people will look at this game and say, yeah, South Carolina's been okay, but they're not that really good of a football team. That defense is going to keep them in this one. It's going to keep them in this one. The only thing that I have a little bit of hesitation on, when it comes to South Carolina defensively. Yeah, you already had a bye week this year, right? And the last time that you came out of a bye game and you went up against Ole Miss, you fell flat on your face. You fell completely flat on your face. And how does Shane Beamer and company respond from, hey, we've done this before. We came back out. We were at home. We got our shit kicked in by Ole Miss. We made some bad coaching blunders. We made some bad offensive blunders in the running game and in the passing game. We did not look good. That's something in the back of my mind. I'm like, look, man, if you come out of a bye week, which teams have struggled in the SEC coming out of bye weeks, if you look the way that you did offensively against Ole Miss, this is going to be a long night for you. Because I fully believe that Texas A&M is a contender. The real question to me in this game is that South Carolina, although that they've been very good offensively, let's look at it from an A&M standpoint and their defense. Because I don't know where they're going to be able to attack where they have had – because I look at South Carolina, man, they have not had a lot of success offensively. They're 104th in the country in total offense. They're 108th in the country in passing offense. They're tied for 115th in third down conversions and third down rate. I guess the really only good thing, I guess, moderately, you could say that they've done, they're 64th in the country in rushing offense. And now you're going up against that defense in Texas A&M, that front seven, who is very talented. So even though I look at South Carolina and know that they've been tested, know that they've gone up against good opponents, know that there is a very viable chance that Kennard and Stewart and Tonka and all of those dudes can give Texas A&M problems, I think it's just as big on the other side with A&M, who's got a very, very good front seven with Scooby Williams, Stewart, Turner, and Scorton. And that offensive line for South Carolina all year has been very bad. This is going to be a slugfest. It's going to be an outright slugfest. But the biggest question in this game for me is for A&M and Marcel Reed. Because even when we started doing the SEC channel stuff, I was on our national show, and then I was on a buddy of mine's show, and he was asking, like, hey, who's the best quarterback right now, or who do you think could be the best quarterback in the SEC? And on his show, live, by the way, I said, look, man, I am really intrigued by Marcel Reed. Very intrigued. Marcel Reed, with Colin Klein as your play caller, gives you the highest upside to win. Connor, and I've said this ad nauseum too, and I said it last week on this channel. Connor Wigman's game against Missouri was fugazi in the sense of, we said, oh, he's making great throws. No, he wasn't. He was making throws, and wide receivers like Noah Thomas and Barber and others were making insane catches. And you were able to run the ball all over them. Missouri's not a good football team right now. But it reminds me, with Marcel Reed, it reminds me of what happened with Colin Klein a year ago at Kansas State. Now, maybe some of you don't know what happened at Kansas State. Like, what the hell happened at Kansas State? Well, Will Howard, who's now the quarterback at Ohio State, who's actually playing really well, very well for Ohio State. They changed quarterbacks from Will Howard and went with Avery Johnson, the guy who's the true dual threat human being. It's what Colin Klein wants to do. You got to run with Marcel Reed. Now, I look at Marcel Reed, and the question is going to become, because I do think that this front seven for South Carolina is good enough to take away. I don't want to say take away. They are good enough to get after you in the run game. They're good enough to get after a young quarterback in Marcel Reed. The question in this game is going to be for A&M. Can Marcel Reed get you big-time conversions throwing the football? I think that he can. We've seen him against Arkansas with big conversions. I mean, he had the big play last week against LSU to Noah Thomas. You better not underestimate this front seven for South Carolina. I'm thinking of A&M games that we've seen this year. You know, they play Florida. Florida is one of the worst teams in the SEC at stopping the run. LSU had massive issues. They had no idea what to do when Marcel Reed came in there. LSU's been fugazi in some things that they do. They're not. They've shown at times that they cannot be a tough football team. You better not underestimate this front seven. And if you're going to win this game, which I think that you can win this football game, and I think you probably will win this football game, I look at the sense of Marcel Reed is going to have to be big and convert on critical downs by throwing the football. Guys, this South Carolina team, for what it's worth, got after Jalen Milroe, who can run the football. Now, you could say, well, Blake Bama's bad. They suck. They do this and that. Jalen Milroe doesn't suck as an athlete. And if you're an A&M fan or any fan in general that says that, then you're an idiot. You're a buffoon if you really believe that Jalen Milroe is not a good athlete. You're an idiot on the highest degree and highest order. If you're going to win this football game, you're going to have to throw the ball through the air and pick up critical downs. Just how it's going to have to be. South Carolina is 16th in the country in run defense. Again, to that point, man, to the point. You got to find ways to connect through the air. If you do that, then you're going to win. But it's going to be a hostile environment. I'm telling you, man, this is going to be arguably one of the best games of the week. I'm already ready for that football game. It's going to be a fantastic football game.